I arrived at the family party to find my children dressed as waiters while my parents laughed. That is what happens to the children of a so-called failure, they said. So, I stopped paying their bills and changed the locks on their house. My name is Philip Nolan. I am 38 years old, the owner of a successful restaurant chain, and a single father to 3 wonderful kids. Luke is 9, Emma is 8, and Matthew is 6. 3 kids, 3 different mothers, and 0 successful marriages. To the outside world, and especially to my parents, that made me a total failure as a man. My first relationship was with Andrea when I was 26. We met in college and fell in love fast. When she got pregnant 3 months into the relationship, we decided to try and make it work. Luke was born, and we loved him, but Andrea and I were too young and too immature. We fought constantly. After 2 years of trying to force something that clearly was not working, we separated amicably. We share custody of Luke. 50-50. 2 years later, I met Danielle. She was different, more mature, more stable. We did well for a year until she got pregnant with Emma. We tried living together to form a family, but we had completely different visions for our lives. She wanted a quiet life in the country. I was building my business in the city, working 70 hours a week. We just were not compatible. We separated when Emma was a year old. We also share custody equally. And finally, there was Carla. I thought she was the one. We got married after dating for a year. Matthew was born a year later. The marriage lasted exactly 18 months before we both admitted we had made a mistake. The divorce was quick, and again, we agreed on shared custody. 3 relationships, 3 kids, 3 separations. For my parents, Oscar and Martha, this was the ultimate family shame. You cannot keep a family, my father would say with contempt. 3 different women, 3 failures. What kind of man are you? But here was the irony. I was successful. Very successful. My restaurant chain had 5 locations across the city. It generated an annual revenue of $3 million. I personally took home around $35,000 a month. I owned 2 houses, one where I lived with my kids, and another I had bought as an investment. My parents, on the other hand, were retired with miserable pensions. They were living in a tiny rental apartment with barely enough money to survive. So, being the failed son, I did something nice. I offered them my second house, free, completely furnished. On top of the house, I gave them $2,000 a month for personal expenses. I paid their electricity, water, internet, cable, cell phones, and even their car insurance. In total, I was giving them free housing plus over $2,700 in cash and services monthly. More than $4,500 a month out of my pocket for 2 people who constantly called me a loser. Why did I do it? Because they were my parents. Because I was still looking for their approval despite everything. But there was something that hurt me even more than their insults toward me. And that was how they treated my children. Luke, Emma, and Matthew were incredible kids. But my parents did not see them that way. They are not a real family, my mother would say. They are 3 kids from 3 different women. It is unnatural. When I took the kids to visit, my parents were cold and distant. Once, Luke asked me, "Dad, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love us?" I lied and said they did. But Luke knew better. I should have cut contact then. But I did not. Until the party. I decided to organize a big family reunion. I rented an event hall, hired catering, spent $8,000. The date was a Saturday. I had an important meeting that morning, so I asked my parents to watch the kids for 2 hours before the party. They agreed with their usual martyr attitude. Saturday morning, I dropped Luke, Emma, and Matthew off. They were dressed perfectly in nice clothes. I arrived at the event hall at 3:15. I walked in with a smile, ready to celebrate. And then I saw something that froze my blood. My children were dressed as waiters. Luke was wearing a black apron, carrying a tray with dirty glasses. Emma had a white apron on, clearing plates. Matthew, my 6-year-old, was wearing an apron too big for him, trying to clean a table. And everyone in the hall was laughing. My father was in the center of a group, laughing. "Look at Philip's grandkids," he said. "This is what the children of a failure look like. Learning the only job they will probably qualify for." My Uncle Robert shouted, "Hey, waiter, more wine over here," pointing at Luke. Luke walked toward him, his face red with shame, tears in his eyes. The rage I felt was absolute. I crossed the hall, ripped the aprons off my children, and held them against me. The hall went silent. "What did you do?" I asked my parents. "We were educating them," my father said defensively. "Teaching them humility. Preparing them for the real life they will have with a father like you." I looked around at the family, laughing at my children. "This party is over," I said. "Everyone out." "You cannot kick us out," my father protested. "We are family." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You stopped being my family the moment you decided to hurt my kids. You do not live in my house anymore. You do not receive another dime from me. It is over." I called security and had them escorted out while they screamed and threatened. That night, after taking my kids home, I sat in my office and took action. First, I called my bank. I canceled all automatic transfers to my parents. The allowance, the bills, everything. Gone. Second, I called an emergency locksmith. "I need you to change all the locks on a property right now," I told him. "I will pay triple the rate." "Tonight?" he asked. "Absolutely tonight," I confirmed. When the locksmith arrived at the investment property, he changed every lock on the house where my parents lived. Front door, back door, garage door, everything. I went home, made sure my kids were still sleeping, and prepared for what was coming. At 11:47 at night, my phone rang. It was my father. I let it ring. He called again immediately. And again. On the 5th call, I answered. Full story on channel, link below.